Hello and welcome to today's episode of the British English Podcast. This one is going to be focusing on the travels of Tristan, who was on this podcast before. We discussed his experience growing up in and around London and then moving abroad, spending a number of years in Costa Rica. And then he had just moved over to France with his French girlfriend. I met Tristan as I was looking for a teacher to help me take group classes in the academy that I run. And I'm so glad for it, as he is a brilliant teacher who has been helping learners pretty much every week for over a year and a half now. But recently he had a trip around Europe, and I thought it would be a good excuse to record a conversation with him, as the last one was so enjoyable. So, today's episode is all about a Londoner called Tristan and his EuroTrip. Here we go. Hello, Tristan. How are you doing?
Hello, mate. I am very good. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolute pleasure. Yes, this is the second time recording this little intro, but I did say you're looking very tanned. Why is that, sir?
Well, just got back from a nice trip in Central Europe. 2.5 weeks, 5 different countries, and the sun pretty much followed us around. We were very lucky.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Is it something that you are very keen on including in your holiday, the sun? Like, is it a major reason why you go somewhere?
This time it wasn't. I think this time we didn't really care if we had good weather or not, because there were kind of city breaks. Obviously if you go on a beach, you're hoping for perfect weather. But no, this time it wasn't an issue for us. We just got very lucky. But some days were actually quite difficult because, you're walking around cities, sightseeing. You don't want it to be too hot. But I can't complain. It was pretty lovely. Considering the time of year, we got pretty lucky actually.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So you're still in France. That's where we left you last episode about a year ago. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Still here in the lovely French countryside.
Lovely.
Still eating croissants and my baguettes. Yeah.
How's the French going?
The French is getting better. I go to French class twice a week. Okay. I've met quite a lot of expats actually, surprisingly, because I'm quite deep in the countryside. I wouldn't expect there to be so many Americans actually. There's quite a few. They're all kind of doing up chateaus. Have you ever seen that program when they on British TV when they do up a chateau, a castle?
Yes. Yeah. I don't know the name of it, but yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah, my mum loves it. I used to watch it with her, and it's like, it's interesting. I think they're all kind of inspired to buy old French houses, castles as well, I guess, small castles, and just do them up. Why not? If you can afford it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Doing up a chateau.
But anyway, your original question was
escape to the chateau.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
That's the dream.
Yeah. I don't know if it is. Is it for you? Would you really want that?
To be honest, like when I first came here, it was a shock to live in the countryside because, I grew up in London. I was living in Costa Rica. So Costa Rica was quite, rural a little bit, but I've got so used to living outside of a city now that during this trip that I was on, which I'm going to talk about, it was a bit of a shock arriving in some of these places. And I felt overwhelmed sometimes when I was in a city. It's strange how quickly you adapt to living in a rural area.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, cities become overwhelming quickly.
They can be, but there is the flip reverse, of course. Like I have become used to city life, and when I stayed in my grandparents' house for 6 months before coming back to a big city, it felt really slow. I mean, stating the obvious, but it felt like I wasn't living. I wasn't like part of a community. So I felt a bit displaced, which was the opposite feeling, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's nice to hear that you can get used to it, though. I like the idea of that, escaping eventually into a place that you can actually afford to get more than just a one bedroom crappy little apartment. So let's go back. So you've been to 5 countries recently. Let's ask you what were the reasons you chose those 5 countries, and what were those countries?
So it was mainly based on budget. We did a quick research, I think early last year, and we were like, okay, where can we go that time of year? Not too expensive, and try and see as much as we can, and take buses and trains in between each stop. So kind of trying to avoid taking so many flights, because I am pretty tired of airports. I've done a fair bit of traveling, and airports just tire me out now. I'm getting old, mate. Don't know. I just can't handle it anymore. Yeah.
I think I know the rough age, but tell the audience, if you will. How old are you?
31. So people probably listening to this thinking, oh, shut up, mate. Like, but yeah, no, I feel maybe I'm a bit mature for my age, possibly.
Yeah.
Don't know.
So what is it that annoys you so much about airports?
Just long. And I've got a bit of an OCD about getting to an airport 2 or 3 hours before. And my girlfriend always just criticizes me for it, because like I obviously have this fear of missing a flight, and I've never missed one in my life. And I don't know where it comes from. I think my dad, maybe he had that same anxiety. Like, we have to get there on time. And he used to take our passports. We didn't have our passports because he would control the whole situation. He would be like, we have to be there. I'm taking your passport. So I think that's I don't know. That's where it came from. But anyway,
I think it's quite reasonable to no, I like it. It's quite reasonable to have that fear, because it's one of the biggest. Like, if you don't get that flight, there's a lot of money at stake, depending on the circumstance. But mostly, like, that's a lot of accommodation gone to waste.
Yeah, it can mess up your trip, especially if you've planned everything to a T. Down to a T? That was in one of your podcasts recently, I think. Yeah.
Down to a T.
Or down to a fine art.
Right?
Down to a fine art as well. That was perfectly. So I think that kind of annoys me about airports. And so we flew basically from Paris to Krakow. So Poland was our first stop. From Krakow, we took a bus down through Slovakia.
Through Slovakia. Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
Then Slovakia, we stopped in a beautiful place in the mountains, but I'll talk about that later. And we then went to Budapest. After that, Vienna in Australia. In Austria. Oh man,
in Austria.
What's wrong with me? It's too early, mate. We did this too early in the morning. I don't usually wake up this early. But yeah, Austria, and then what was next? I'm lost. Prague. Prague. I'm not even going to say the country because I'm going to get it wrong. Czech Republic, of course.
So Czech Republic. On Google Maps, it always says Czechia now for me. Have you seen that?
Okay, Czechia. I think I don't know. Maybe your location is set to somewhere else. Maybe, because each country obviously says it very differently. I noticed that as well, because my girlfriend, I can't remember what they call it in French as well, but there's something different. But I would say Prague was the best place. I don't want to say anything. There was nothing negative about anywhere. I'm not going to say anything bad. It was all lovely, but Prague was beautiful. I just loved the vibe and the architecture. It was really cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to delving into that. So the first location was there an instant change in the cultural norms that you noticed? Do you reckon when you went to where was before Budapest? What was the first
It
one?
was so we started in Poland in
Poland,
Krakow.
in Krakow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is not that far away from Ukraine. Like when we were looking on the map, we were like, "Oh wow, we are pretty close." And I didn't notice it myself, but I've got a few Polish students, and I've got a few Belarusian students who have moved to Krakow recently. It seems like a bit of a hub for Belarusians or people moving out of Belarus because it's not
Right.
that far. And
Yeah.
basically, a lot of them have said that they feel the tension a little bit because as we record this podcast, like, you know, there are tensions
Yeah.
and Poland might kind of get involved. I don't know. They're close to the action, I guess. They're close to what's going on. So they commented to me and said, well, they feel this kind of nervous energy in the air. I didn't feel it. Maybe because I was on holiday, just chilling, having a good time. But yeah, it was quite close when you look on the map. You're like, wow, okay, I could take a bus there to the border. But obviously,
Did
it's
that make
in
you
the
feel?
east.
Did that make you feel nervous?
Not really. No. Maybe, I don't know. At the time that we went, there wasn't so much in the news building up to it. So I think that helped to keep us a little bit, because I mean, obviously the news is full of other stuff going on right now. It's probably not worth going into politics, but I think we didn't notice stuff that was going on, which maybe made us feel a bit calmer. But you know,
okay.
I loved Krakow.
So the energy, it didn't feel too tense for you, but you loved it. Why did you love it?
It was cheap. No.
When you say cheap, what do you find cheap, and what is really satisfying for maybe a Brit abroad to find that is cheap?
Well, I'm going to be very stereotypical here and say beer. The beer was pretty cheap. No, generally, the transport was really, like, I think the transport in all of the places that we went to was amazing. Just how clean and efficient, and it's not like in the UK we don't have clean or efficient transport. It's just like, I feel like when I go back to London and I take the underground, you end up spending a lot of money just for a single travel. And the buses in the UK, I realized that I hate the system of the buses in the UK because
like
everyone
the
has to
National
go
Express.
No, the buses like London buses. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes. The buses
or local buses. Yeah. So like, you always have to go on through the front door, and everyone goes on one by one and taps their bank card or whatever. It used to be Oyster card. And like, I don't know, it just feels very, like, I don't know what the word is to describe that, but in other countries in Europe, I've been to Italy as well and other places, people just get on a bus on any of the doors, which actually speeds up the process because the driver doesn't have to wait for everyone to pass through and pay their fare individually. So you're not sitting there for 2 minutes sometimes in each bus stop, waiting for everyone to get on. It's just a quick exchange of passengers.
How are they checking whether they've actually, paid for their fare though?
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's what I don't understand as well, because are there a lot of fare dodgers? Is that what we would call them? Fare dodgers?
Yeah, sounds good.
I think that comes down to culture, really, because is there in the UK more of a distrust of people that they think that they can't implement this system? They have to go one by one.
I don't know. Well, this is interesting. I'm just recording another episode about a book by George Mikes called How to Be a Brit. And he was a Hungarian that came over to the UK during the World Wars. And he said, in comparison to mainland Europe and British people, he said, let me get this right. He said, there are criminals in the UK, and then there are trustworthy people in the UK. Whereas in Europe, there are criminals, there are people in between, and then there are honest people. So he
Okay.
said it's pretty black and white in the
Mm-hmm.
UK,
Mm-hmm.
whereas in mainland Europe, he was saying that there's a grey area between the two. What do you feel about that comment? Because it kind of disrupts this where you were going with the idea of the having to make sure you pay for your bus fare. So I don't know, because this was 50, 80 years ago that he had this opinion. Do you think it's changed? Maybe?
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say. I mean, also you have to look at the regions as well and think that London in itself is another entity. Like
Yes.
you've got so many different cultures all mixed in together, and it's hard to generalize. I just think that for me, the European system, let's call it European system, where you can jump on a bus on any door, and there's a trust that you will buy a ticket and stamp your ticket, because they have these machines, right? You just stamp it. And even there is like a kind of electronic machine where you touch the screen and you buy the ticket on the bus. And that for me was also quite like advanced, because on London buses, we don't have that. I think you buy it from the driver.
We just think since COVID,
probably
it's
has
pretty much just tap only.
For me, it's more progressive. It's more like, I don't know. It's like just this word,
trusting
like
in the people.
Like you trust people to do the right thing, and that kind of maybe is a better attitude to have.
Definitely, because it's telling you that you're a good person. It's just these subtleties throughout the day of like, I trust you to be an independent, respectful human and honest. So please stamp the ticket, though.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Part of me was like, should I buy a ticket? Should I? Do I really need to buy a ticket?
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? When you buy a ticket and then there's no one checking, you're like, oh, people are not buying, and then I'm the mug. You start to question yourself.
No, but I again have this, like, I think if you live in a place and you know how the system works and you know where the ticket inspectors are going to be, then you can probably get away with it if you really wanted to. But because I'm obviously ignorant to where they might be, and I think they would probably be harsher on tourists. My girlfriend said, no, if we didn't and they caught us, then they would probably be like, oh, whatever, he's a tourist. But I have the opposite feeling. I'd be like, well, they probably would be harsher because they want tourists to follow the rules and not disrespect them. And
maybe it depends on how much paperwork is involved. Because I remember in America, if you said that you're not from America, the police would be like, oh God, this is going to be so much more paperwork. Okay. But I didn't get in trouble in America, of course. All right. So you traveled with just your partner, yes?
Yes, correct.
And did this choice impact your experience at all in a positive or negative way?
Is she listening next door? I don't know. I have to check. So it's always different when you travel in a couple. I mean, I love traveling alone, and that's no disrespect to her. I'm a bit of a lonely traveler because you can be a bit more spontaneous, and you can kind of choose a restaurant very easily without having to have a debate or a discussion about it for an hour and and read every single review on TripAdvisor. No, I'm joking. It's not that bad, but it can be, right? Sometimes.
I wanted to ask that because you've had, I mean, I don't know what your situation was before her necessarily, but you were indicating to me that you've traveled around the world on your own quite a lot. So this is maybe a stark contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, I've done a lot of backpacking. But the problem with solo traveling is arriving in, completely strange places, sometimes at night. You get off a bus or a train and you just feel really lonely in those moments. And especially when you're trying to like, if you eat alone for the first night, it's hard. That's the most challenging thing, I think, is the loneliness sometimes.
Do you, in those situations, can you remember if you would cling on to a device for comfort, or would you try to embrace being that lonely person and being fine with it and being mindful of the environment and sort of people watching?
Device. So I think when I was traveling 2014, my smartphone was pretty limited. Like,
pretty dumb.
I mean, we had Instagram at that time. I mean, it's not like 100 years ago, but I wasn't using it as much as I do now, or that people do now. So I don't remember sitting at a table using my phone, to be honest. Maybe I'd read or kind of, probably I was checking like travel stuff, like where to go next, like in a book, like in a Lonely Planet book or something like that. It is kind of like awkward when you're sitting at a table alone. You feel a little bit.
Okay.
I do sometimes. But anyway,
you do, yeah.
The trip was good. Like we have pretty similar tastes, and of course you want to enjoy the experience with someone, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you were reading some reviews to find the right restaurants, and did you find the right restaurants? Was there really good food out there that you couldn't get back in the UK or in France? We will be leaving the free version of this episode here for today. But if you did want to continue listening to this conversation, then head over to the BritishEnglishPodcast.com, where you can sign up to the Premium Podcast or the Academy. The Premium Podcast gives you the ad-free version with transcripts, a full glossary and flashcards, whereas the Academy gives you all of that plus a whole lot more, including vocab video lessons, writing assignments, weekly Zoom classes, and you can also get paired with a new speaking partner of a similar level to yours each month to really get your speaking practice in. But if you were just here for the free version of this episode, then I thank you very much. Congratulations for getting to the end of this part, and I hope to see you back here next week for another episode. I've been your host, Charlie, on the British English Podcast.